The first player to commit to Utah in the class of 2026 just decommitted. What does it mean for this recruiting class as a whole? And Utah football is setting up their 2028 schedule, and they have a major matchup with a Big Ten foe. We're talking about it all on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. If it's your first time tuning into this show, make sure you like and subscribe. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. My name is JT Wistrcill, excited to be joined on today's show by the host of, one of the producers at the KSL Sports Zone, host of the Saturday show, commentator for High School Rewind as well, KSL Sports High School Rewind, Alex Napoles. He does it all, and today he's going to help me cover a few things. We're talking about a very interesting conversation, natural grass versus turf at the end with the Rice-Eccles Stadium, also about some future scheduling stuff. Mentioned that Big Ten opponent. We got to talk about who that's going to be a couple years down the road, but still important. But have to start with Utah. A little bit of a loss on the recruiting trail here, as they did lose who was their first commit of the class of 2026. Utah does have two other guys, so it's not like the cupboard is empty on that class, but Colby Simpson, it was their first commit. He's a 6'5", 222-pound tight end, the 80th ranked tight end in the class of 26, a three-star prospect. He said, hey, I'm opening up my commitment again. Appreciate the University of Utah, but I'm going to be reopening up my commitment. And my reaction to this is it hurts. I think it more so hurts from the standpoint of, hey, there's only two guys in this class right now, and I expect June to be a big month. We're still early into June. Now, granted, getting a little later. It's now the 8th, but still early. I think the biggest thing, though, is just the fact you only have two guys in. Because I look at Colby Simpson, I'm like, okay, I think he had the chance to be a good player. Was probably wasn't going to be a guy who played right away if you're Utah. So, and there's other three-star tight ends I look at and like, okay, I think you can find another tight end comparable to this, but nonetheless, Alex, still a loss anytime you still lose a player from your team.
Still a loss. This was the first guy to commit to Utah for this 2026 class, and so I think losing that just hurts losing your first guy just hurts a little bit extra. But definitely, I mean, there's the number 80th tight end. There's definitely other players that Utah can go after that can probably potentially bring you more. That's a little bit higher as far as the rankings and their recruiting goes, but it is sometimes alarming when you have a person decommitting from your program, when you have a person leaving your program, right? I feel like there was a little bit of a trend last year where some high level recruits, decommitted from Utah. That kind of raised some alarm bells, and now heading into this new 2026 class, which I think is going to be super important and pivotal for the University of Utah. Now you're losing a commit from that class. And so there is, like I said, as far as talent goes, there is probably better options out there on the market that Utah can go after, but it is concerning when you lose a commitment from that class.
Yeah, and it's nothing against Colby. I've broken down his game on this show before. I think he has a chance to be an incredibly good collegiate tight end, but it's just a matter of hey, it's never mattered less, in my opinion, to lose a player from a commit. And that's also why when Utah landed Simpson, you can go back to my show for anyone listening to this. I'm not like, oh my gosh, this is massive, this is everything, because it's not even about him. It's just the nature of the world of recruiting. Number one, we are seeing more guys decommit than ever. We just saw Dan Lanning jump in a pool with a dude, and then he left a few weeks later. So this is the norm of college recruiting now. So it's nothing against him. It's just hey, this is what happens. You see these guys come, change, and go. And he is not a player of the talent level, as I mentioned, where it's oh, Utah can't recover of this. And part of the reason for all this too, Alex, that I feel like decommitments don't hurt as much as they used to, is the transfer portal. This was a need a few years down the road. So if he's class of 26, he would have redshirt just based on the film, what I saw. So earliest he's contributing is the 27 season. That's a long time away from now for Utah to find another tight end in the portal, land some other commits. That's why I look at this overall. I'm like, okay, anytime you have a player who you got into your building and he was like, I want to play here, and then changes his mind, that hurts. But overall, it's hey, Utah lost a tight end that wouldn't factor into things until 27 probably. That makes the loss a lot more swallowable, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, you look maybe even 6-7 years ago, when a player decommits from your school, it kind of hurts. It's kind of a reflection of the program. But now I think we're in a day and age where unfortunately, the players are going to follow the money, and they're going to follow who's the highest bidder. And so I don't necessarily think it's a reflection of Utah and the program. I think more so it's a reflection of just the nature of what we've come to know as college athletics, right? And I think even when you have a guy committed, coming up from the recruiting from the high school ranks, when you have somebody committed, nothing's set in stone until the documents are signed or until that rev share contract is signed or whatever, wherever we're going now with all this. And so, it reflects, I think it raises concerns, but I don't think it's anything that Utah can't bounce back from.
Yeah, just because of the timeline of when they'd probably be relying on Simpson, as I mentioned, I feel the same way. And I will also, though, just say, hey, tight end is a position Utah's got to continue to get to work on. I think Dallin Bentley might have another year after this one. I also didn't think he was phenomenal last year, so tight end is a concern for Utah this year. And Jason Beck's offense doesn't utilize tight ends as much. They'll still be part of the equation, but I even go back. I mean, you're asking a guy who, in Hunter Andrews, he's never even played the position at the collegiate level. He was a linebacker, then was running back, linebacker. Like, they've just moved him all over the place. So asking him to be the guy at tight end is already a concern for Utah, but Simpson wasn't going to help for this year anyway, so they have time to recover from tight end. The thing I had mentioned, though, that you could say is a little more concerning is, hey, the fact that Utah does only have 2 recruits submitted so far. So I will say that's not like major fireball, like complete panic mode to me, just because of I look at what Utah's missed on are 4 stars in-state products. That's obviously concerning. But when you look at, like, how are the other Big 12 teams doing? Well, there's some Big 12 teams that have like a couple of 4-star recruits, 3 to 4, and then they'll have like 10 3-star recruits. Utah's going to have no problem getting 3-star recruits. If you're a P4 program, you just don't. And Utah has several guys they're in conversations with. They're having a ton of guys up to visit. I just don't have a doubt that Utah's going to land some talent. Like, are they missing out on players that down the road could prevent them from reaching the upper echelon of college football? Yeah, that's absolutely part of it too. But I just think in today's age, like, hey, you've missed on some of the best guys in state. There's still a lot of time for Utah to round out this class. I don't think it's going to be one that measures up to the 23 class a couple years ago where you got Fano and Smith Snowden. But in terms of like a disaster class, I don't see it as that, even though you only have 2 guys committed, because I do feel like they'll fill this out with some quality 3-star guys that I will also say help make Utah football into the brand that was voted one of the 25 best of the 2020 so far. Absolutely.
It's still early as far as getting those commitments and as getting, your board rounded out for this 2026 class. It's early, but it's late, right? It feels late, but it's really not.
More. They should have more.
You should have more. You should have more than 2. That is a little bit concerning, but there's no doubt in my mind that, the coaching staff, they've mentioned it all the time. You never stop recruiting. You never stop working at recruiting and trying to bring in guys to your program. And so there's no doubt in my mind that everybody up on the Hill right now is scrambling to hurry up and try to get a couple more commitments and try to feel a little bit better. And not only on their end, but I mean, on the fan side as well, try to get people feeling a little bit better about this 2026 class, because again, I think it's going to be a really important class for Utah. Yes, you can, bring in some good prospects through the transfer portal, but at the end of the day, I think the backbone of your program is still built through high school recruiting and bringing in the guys that you want to bring in to build those foundations. And it comes from the high school ranks. And so there's still time. But yes, Utah needs to just work a little bit quicker on getting a little bit more recruits ready to go for this class.
Yeah, Utah's thrived on finding the under-the-radar guys, and that's what they're going to have to find. Missed out on Brock Harris, Bot Mulitalo, and I guess those guys, Harris is still going to visit, so I guess there's a chance that happens, but it seems highly unlikely. Tafa, so this is a really good class of 2026. Utah focused a lot of their efforts, at least on landing the top in-state recruits. Those guys chose BYU, Oregon, wherever it may be, so it's unfortunate, obviously, if you are Utah, but there are lots of other guys still out there and quality players that are available for this team to get. They will get a fine and solid recruiting class in here, but once again, this recruiting class doesn't win games on paper. Some teams have recruiting classes where you go, whoa, those teams are awesome. And thankfully games aren't played on paper. So that's where these guys will outperform those projections. They'll ball out. And I have total faith in Kyle Whittingham, the staff, this group, that this recruiting class will still end up producing several solid additions for Utah football. Whatever players end up in this recruiting class, they're going to be involved in some of the games in the 2028 season. Utah released all of their non-conference games. They set the slate, so we are going to be breaking it down, including a monster Big Ten matchup, which I can't wait to discuss. We'll dive into that momentarily. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action than with FanDuel. FanDuel really makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off, live, and with player props, too. How about you can track those performance trends, also same-game parlays? Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Who do you think is going to ball out in the finals? It's been a great series so far. Is Tyrese Halliburton and the Pacers, obviously we saw what they did in game one. Are they going to be able to come out on top of this series? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, though, the MVP. So many strong players on the Thunder. Jalen Williams, even our own Brandon Carlson's on the team. He doesn't play much, of course, but you can head over to FanDuel, check it all out today. You could do a $5 bet, and if that hits, you win $200 in bonus bets with FanDuel. New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. And not just the NBA, you can go to the NHL, Stanley Cup Finals too, baseball in full swing, college sports winding down, but FanDuel has you covered. So head over to Bet All Things NBA today. Alex Napoles back here with me. Utah has set their 2028 schedule. If you were sitting here going, well, we haven't even done 25, still waiting on to see what happens for 26 season. 27 get to play Miami. We're excited about that. And it's like, wow, you're going all the way out to 2028. And it's like, yeah, that's how far they schedule these out. And that's a conversation we're also going to have here. I think that's a problem that you do it this far in advance, because then things also get icky. For example, last year, yes, Utah beat Baylor, but that ended up being a conference game. That's a little different than some of the stuff, but just in the ever-changing world of college athletics, Utah is going to play one of these games we're going to talk about. Utah will play a team in 2033. If you had said right now, JT, is that game going to happen in 2033? I would venture to say no. And it's just because I think we're in for more conference realignment shakeup. That's the reason I say that. But either way, we got these games in 2026. It'll be Utah Tech first, Nevada, then Wisconsin. I am fired up to play the Badgers. Utah versus Wisconsin, a battle of premier Under Armour schools. That's right, two of the only Under Armour schools in all of college football. But I like it. I think this is how you do it now, right? You play a G5 team, you play an FCS team and a Utah Tech, and then you play another P4 team. I think that's how you should structure a non-conference schedule. I like what Utah's doing here. How do you feel about it, Alex?
I like the way that it's structuring it as well. Like you mentioned, you want to have an FCS test to, I guess, kind of shake off the rust and kind of maybe even flaunt a little bit. Who knows? But you do want that FCS opponent. You want a group of 5 as well to kind of get you a little bit of a more difficult test before you make your way up to a Big Ten school. That is going to be a huge test. One of the biggest, I guess, talking points, one of the biggest conversations from spring meetings a couple weeks ago across all the conferences was scheduling and what schools, what and how schools want scheduling to look like and how they want them to go. A lot of talk about, the SEC wanting to sharpen themselves with contests against the Big Ten. And I think the Big 12 should be shooting the same way. Absolutely. You schedule games like this against Wisconsin, against Big Ten opponents to test yourself to see if you truly are what you say you are. And I think that's exactly what we're going to see. I mean, 2028 is a really, really long time away. And with the way everything's going in college sports, who knows where we're at in 2028. But if everything just runs its course and, we say somewhat to what we know as college football today, I think 2028 will be a phenomenal test for Utah to test themselves against a Big Ten team like Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm. It's a great, as you mentioned, schedule to ramp yourself up till you reach that Big Ten opponent. I think Wisconsin's a very good, that's a very comparable Big Ten opponent for Utah to play. If Utah was playing Ohio State again, I'd be excited about it, but that game for Utah at Ohio State, that's just going to be incredibly tough to win. I know the rev share is now a thing, so Utah can spend $20 million on their roster. Ohio State just spent $20 million on their roster. Now they can add an additional $20 million. That's just that becomes tough. We have to be in one game, neutral site. I like that, but it's just tough to go into their house. And I'd love to have them out to Utah. I think that could be a good game, but I think Wisconsin is a good one to schedule there. You mentioned ramping up. I compare Utah's schedule like this as to a roller coaster, at least the way I approach amusement parks. I do not go to the biggest and scariest rides at Lagoon is the amusement park out in Salt Lake City, right? So I don't go into Lagoon and go to the top ride. I would start with a medium one, like something above maybe teacups. I don't know if there's teacups at Lagoon, but those of you been to amusement parks, I'm talking about, right? So I'd start at something comparable to that. Then, and that'd be your Utah Tech, right? Your starters are gonna play the first half, which is just what Utah did against Southern Utah, right? Starters playing the first half. Then this is a prime redshirt game. Get all these second string guys in so that, hey, if there's an injury, they've had some game experience before. Then you get the same thing against Nevada, right? The next level of a roller coaster, right? This one's got a few more loop-de-loops, turns, all of that. And in that type of a game, you probably have to play your starters 3 to at least halfway through the fourth quarter, probably, but another just step up in competition and continuing to get better and put yourself in the best position until you meet, boom, now we reach Wisconsin. This is the roller coaster with the big drop. This is the one that people lose their cell phones on and things of that nature. So you got to be at your best and ready for. And Utah does go to Wisconsin, Camp Randall, jump around. This is one of, I would actually say it's a top 10 venue in college football. I used to live in Madison, like when I was very, very young. So maybe I'm a little biased for that, but I'm really excited about this. I think if Luke Fickell's still there, but anyway, Wisconsin football, that's a state and a team that prides themselves on their run game and physicality. The Jonathan Taylor, the Melvin Gordons, like them versus Utah, not just because it's also red versus white. I already mentioned the Under Armour. Those two cultures, the styles fit. I'm really excited about that game, even though it's very far away.
It's very far away. But it's still awesome to get excited for a game like that because, I mean, again, going back to the spring meetings, there's a lot of talk about what's going to happen to the playoff format and what's going to happen to scheduling and all that. And I think it's a great way to boost your resume, right? Especially if you're able to go on the road to a Big Ten school and get a win. That's going to do wonders to your resume, to what's potentially going to be, either the 5+11 model or whatever they decide to go with as far as the college football playoff model goes. But again, it's just a resume builder. And I think instead of scheduling, I don't want to call them inferior because at the end of the day, anybody can beat anybody, but the 2 G5 schools, right? It allows you to sharpen yourself and test yourself against the top opponents. And again, at the end of the day, in the eyes of the committee, it'll just help you build that resume, especially if you're able to walk out with a win, and ultimately improve your opportunity and your chances at getting a high seeding for what could be a playoff berth. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. I'm excited about these games, especially Wisconsin one. What sucks about it, though, Alex, is something we already mentioned. This game is being played in 2028. Alex, I want you to guess when Wisconsin will then come to Salt Lake City. Guess the year.
Oh, I want to say 32 or 33.
33.
33. There you go.
That's insane. I didn't do the math on this, but that's like what, third graders, something like that. Like we're right now getting ready for the third graders to eventually be making that trip. It's already on the docket. This to me, things like that to me are what's wrong with college football. You should not be scheduling that far out in advance. I think college football to me should try and become more and more like the NFL, especially, hey, we're paying players now. So we're even, that similarity is another thing that's added, right? To me, I like the NFL's model of how you play someone else from your conference, but in a comparable spot. For example, if the Steelers finish atop the AFC North, they will then play the New England Patriots if they finish atop the AFC East. That's how that works. You play all the other top place finishing teams. I would love if, rather than saying, hey, we're going to play LSU, Arkansas, and Miami eventually, I'm excited for those games, but it diminishes my excitement. It's I got to wait all the way till then, and just knowing what can happen, the games can get canceled, those things can get thrown off. So to me, I would just rather have this happen where it was every year okay, you should still play FCS, G5, and then your P4 team, but whether that's a Big 10, SEC, wherever, I would love it if wherever Utah finished in the Big 12, they matched up with a team opposite of them. I think that's an incredibly fair model to do it and actually promotes parity, which is, Alex, honestly, probably why it'll never happen, because I don't think the SEC and the Big 10 want to challenge their brands that way. But that's what I wish we had it, rather than, 2033, Wisconsin Badgers making the trip out to the mountains. That doesn't do it for me.
And at the rate that we're going, JT, what's the reality of that game actually happening, right? Because it seems like every year everything's changing, and there's just so much uncertainty that I think that planning something out into 2033 right now in college football is just unrealistic. I do think that I do think that scheduling is something that I think will continue to be a big topic of conversation as we continue to go down. Whether that's going to be another conference realignment, whether it's going to be the SEC specifically just going and wanting to play Big Ten teams and vice versa. Right, there's still a lot that can happen, especially in such a large time frame. Like you mentioned, it's third graders who are in school right now in third grade that are going to be getting ready to play that game in 2033, and that's just absolutely insane to even think about. And so the amount of things that can change and probably will change until then, I don't think it's realistic to have a team on your schedule that far out, because the reality is, who knows? I don't think that there's a huge chance that game gets played.
I agree. I think there's a better chance the 28-1 gets played. There's just certain rights deals that come up that really throw in doubt me, the 2033 one. Also, Alex, we live in a world and a culture, of course, where everyone wants to get their take in first. So I'm ready to say right here, right now, Utah will go to Wisconsin and shock the Badgers in Camp Randall. I want this documented as we are recording this on Sunday, June 8th. So as Sunday, June 8th, 2025, I am predicting Utah over 3 years from now, having zero idea who will even be on the team. I don't even know if anyone that's on Utah's roster currently will be involved in that game. Simple fact is transfer portal guys graduating, all things of that nature. I'm taking Utah to win. So I just wanted to get that out there first. Drop in the comments below. I will actually, let's close with this before we talk about some of the natural grass turf discussion. Of the games that Utah has scheduled in the future, it's LSU, Arkansas, Miami, Wisconsin. For me, Alex, I know it's going to be tough. I can't help be excited about Utah going to Death Valley is going to be magnificent. Utah versus LSU. And I'm really excited to see Utah play Miami and Las Vegas. That'll be awesome too. But just if you were to say to me, I already mentioned Wisconsin's a top 5 venue. I think Death Valley, LSU, that's probably top 3 for me, especially if they can get that as a night game. I am really excited for that game. Of those non-conference one, which one stands out to you the most? I think we get Arkansas next year.
I think the one that stands out to me the most is by far the LSU, matchup that they have scheduled for 31 and 32, I believe it is. But again, and you mentioned it too, JT. There's a media deal. What's that?
As we just talked, that's so deflating. As we just talked about, I'm talking about. I tricked myself into getting excited for it again, and then you're like, yeah, in 2031, and I'm like, oh, that's right. We just
well, and you brought it up. There's media deals that expire in that 30-31 range, and so again, who knows if these games actually do get played? But it is exciting at the idea that Utah can go and test themselves against LSU, who isn't too far removed from a national championship back in 19, right? And so that's exactly what you want as a Big 12 school. That's exactly what you want as a youth, as for this program. You want them to go and test themselves against the best, because it gives you an idea of where this program truly stands against those top competitors, right? You look at LSU right now, and they are projected, they're a top 10 projected team this upcoming football season. That's exactly the type of opposition that you want to be playing against. But again, it's just so far down the road that it makes you question whether or not that series will actually happen. But if it does, I'm all for it. I love it.
I am too. I do not think Brian Kelly will be the coach of LSU, and probably he'll be retired by then anyways. I don't even think they're a top 10 team. This isn't locked on LSU, but we did this last year with Florida State was one that stuck out to me. With the way LSU didn't even, I don't even know if they finished ranked. Maybe they did. Maybe that's harsh. Gosh, them as a top 10 team. And I know they are too. That's a lot too. Obviously, Utah's trying to return to the status of being an elite program. And one thing that really hurt them and has hurt them for a couple of years now is just the amount of injuries that this team has had routinely. And one thing you hear a lot of coaches talk about, more at the NFL and the collegiate level, is that it's better to play on natural grass than turf. In fact, I looked it up too. Natural grass, NFL players often prefer natural grass because they perceive it to be safer and easier on their bodies than artificial turf. Natural grass provides more give and cushioning, potentially reducing the risk of non-contact lower extremity injury, while turf is seen as harder and more likely to cause those injuries. So this past weekend, there was a soccer game that was played in Rice-Eccles Stadium. You were there, Alex, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that in a moment. But Fred Whittingham Jr., Utah's tight end coach, tweeted out, natural grass looks awfully good in Rice-Eccles Stadium, ! I think that's a not so subtle way of saying, hey, we want this to stay. We can talk about the logistics in a moment, but in a natural grass or turf, just based on the science, I am a supporter of absolutely going to natural grass.
I agree. And And look, I'm speaking from a soccer background and somebody who, has played multiple times on natural grass and turf. It's just as an athlete and as a soccer player, there is a much more desire to play on natural grass. Playing on turf is rough, especially when you go in for the slide tackles, especially when you go in for you go in for something a hard challenge and you hit the turf, and it's true. The science proves that there is increased injuries when it is an artificial turf field. And while the artificial turf, I feel like gives you a lot aesthetically. It's more colorful. It's easier to quote unquote maintain. Whatever. I don't think there's anything that beats playing on the natural grass. And so I am a big believer, and I am a big believer in natural grass and wanting to have sports be played on that natural grass.
Yeah, I am as well. And I mean, how do you think it looked this weekend at Rice-Eccles Stadium? I ask you, you were there.
I thought it looked great. I thought it looked phenomenal. Obviously, a part of it, maybe if you give it a couple more days or something, it's a little bit less patchy, but it did look a little bit patchy. But I mean, obviously, as it's a makeshift one, I'm not sure if they pulled out the turf and then rolled in the grass, but I know a lot of people, I know a lot of stadiums that when they do a thing for like a soccer event like that, they'll put like slabs over the turf and then they'll put the grass on top of the slabs. And so I'm not sure what Rice-Eccles decided to do in this case, but I know for a lot of soccer players too, when that happens, when they're playing turf on top of a slab on top of grass, it's also not a good natural feeling because it just feels bumpy, it feels rough. And so I feel like if the field looked good first, it did look good. But it would be interesting to see if Utah does decide to maybe go the BYU route and go back to some natural grass.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting to go. And like we mentioned, the logistics of this become interesting. Like, does the Utah they have the $20 million in rev share? Like, do they take not money out of that, but just other money in their athletics that could go to that rev share now or in the future to make that swap? Honestly, I think what you do is you would ask a donor to do that. You see that happen with a lot of things of this nature. And you could say, well, it could be used on recruiting, but overall, the long-term benefit, if it does help. I will also say, look, just based on everything that's happened with the team, I do not think the reason that Utah has the amount of injuries they've had in the past few years, could you say turf has contributed to that maybe a little bit? Sure. I do not think that is the main reason. When you've seen how many guys have gone down, and really some of them happen in the game, some of them don't. Like, I do not think that is the biggest injury issue plaguing Utah right now either. So would I like to see this? Yes. But I do think there's bigger things that Utah just needs to fix in their injury cleanup department. And hopefully they have done some of those things to avoid what has just been injury after injury that's really held this team back the last few years, Alex.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I don't 100% want to pin it on the turf or say that it's 100% the turf's fault, but I think that Utah definitely has to get to a point where they can be a little bit more healthier, because the last 2 seasons we've seen what happens when you're completely decimated with injuries. And Utah has to figure out ways to keep this team healthy if they want to compete. And that's not a knock on their depth or anything, but there's a big difference. There was a big difference from what we saw the last couple of years when, your second, third stringers going down to even your fourth string quarterback has to come into the game, right? How many 2 games from the Ferrari, right?
Yeah.
And so you see the difference. And so I think Utah has to figure out ways to minimize as many injuries as they possibly can. And if there's any link to playing on turf that can potentially bring down that risk of injury, then I think that that's something that they should definitely look at and look into.
I agree. It'll be interesting to see what Mark Harlem, this athletic department, how they decide to approach that, the future scheduling, commitment, all those things. And for all those things, make sure you guys keep it here at Locked On Utes. We talk about those things every single day. Alex, always a blast when you come on, man. Please let everyone know what you have going on. You are one of the busiest men in the Salt Lake City media scene.
Luckily, we're getting a little downtime right now. It's a little bit of a break as we, college football is right around the corner. And so right now that everything's kind of winding down, it is nice to take a couple of days off, but I do have coverage across me and most Utah local sports that you can think of. And so if you want to find any of that coverage, at Napoles Alex on Instagram, on Twitter, that's where you find it, at Napoles Alex. And always a blast coming on here, JT.
It's always a blast having you. You said around the corner. Still feels like a long corner just based on the amount of time we have to get through till August. But you're right, Big 12 Media Days are like less than a month away. So it is coming up on us quickly. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes. Thank you all again for making Locked On Utes your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to college football's landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Thanks again to Alex Napoles for joining me. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Utes. Back with you tomorrow. I'll talk about the latest in Utah football and Utah athletics.